This segment is brought to you by JigMasters Jigs. When in doubt, get the jig out. Go to JigMasters.com and use promo code PNF20 and save 20% off your next jig order today.
Welcome to the Bass Kayak and Beer segment on the Paddle and Fin Network. It's your host Armando Sola, and on this segment we kick back with a special guest and talk about life, kayak fishing, and the pursuit of big bass. So get your cold brews on and enjoy the show. Hello everyone, and welcome once again to the Bass Kayak and Beer segment on the Paddle and Fin Network. As always, it's your boy Armando, your host for today. Before we get started, as always, thanks to Douglas Rods for sponsoring this segment. Go check out Douglas Rods at douglasoutdoors.com. Check out the full lineup of LRS rods and X-Matrix rods. They also have award-winning flyer fishing rods if you're into that. So go check them out. Huge thanks to them. So special guest for today, somebody that I've been wanting to get on my show, but his calendar is full and it doesn't think to get any better in 2020. He just posted his new schedule and it's packed full of tournaments. I don't know how this man is gonna live with all this racking up the miles. But with no further delay here, we got Jake Harshman. Jake, how you doing, man?
Man, I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on.
It's a pleasure to have you on my show, man. Like I said, I've been wanting to get you on my show for a longer time. I know you're a very charismatic guy, not just a great angler. You also do some social media, which I find it's really cool. And I heard some of your interviews with Josh Smith and Doug Waters and other podcasts, and I love your charisma and the way you go about,
Charismatic is one way to describe it. Yeah.
I cracked up when you were talking about how big fat lips, big fat bass with like leggings on. I can't do it. I'm not as funny as you are. I don't have that charisma. But I was cracking up.
Girls wearing yoga pants.
That's the one. Yeah. I was listening while I was driving to a ramp, and I almost drove off. Man, that was hilarious. I could not stop laughing. So Jake, man, again, thank you for coming in. Let's dive a little bit into, for those that don't know you, what do you do other than kayak fish, and ultimately, how do you get into kayak fishing?
So, I work full time as a federal police officer.
Nice.
I live in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
Thank you for your service, by the way. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Live in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and before that, I spent 12 years in the military. I had to think about that for a second. I was active duty Air Force as an MP or we call it security forces, but everyone would commonly know it as military police. Did that for 12 years before I got out. And picked up a civilian job as a cop. And then it wasn't until I really got out of the military that I started kayak fishing. I started kayak fishing in late 2017, which is honestly, in all reality, it's when I really started seriously bass fishing as well. Prior to that, like I grew up as a kid fishing mountain streams and rivers for trout, and if we caught a bass, it was like, oh, that's stupid, throw it back. But it was, that 2017 is when I caught that bass bug, I guess. Like I went out and bought my first kayak, and after that, it's been, it's a lot of time and a lot of money spent since then.
Oh yeah.
So
I bet.
But
what was your first kayak?
My first kayak was an Ascend. FS12. I did not have it very long. I realized quickly that was not the boat for me, and I moved on to an Old Town Predator PDL, which I ended up having 2 or 3 of those. After I bought my first one, later that year the next year I was selected to join the Old Town Pro staff, and then I got a new PDL. And I also bought a Predator 13 that was the non-pedal version, and I put a Torpedo motor on the back of that. And Just this year, I'd gotten one of the new Sportsman big water PDLs, the 132. But since then, I've moved on from Old Town. So
Really?
yeah, I did. We can talk about it if you want.
Sure. No, go ahead, man. It's floor is yours.
Yeah. So I was really excited to be on the Old Town team. I love the Old Town Predator PDL. But there was a conflict between me and some folks at Old Town about the new boat that they came out with, the autopilot. I'm not a fan of that boat, and they basically wanted me to fish out of that boat, and I told them that I wasn't going to fish out of that boat. Part of that was because I have such a strong relationship with Jeff Little and Torquedo. Mm-hmm. That I just believe that that's a better motor system for propulsion. And, I expressed that to him and told him some of my issues that I had with the new boat design and that I just didn't think it was on an efficient hull. They chose the topwater hull versus the Predator hull. The Predator hull was a much more efficient hull. And, I explained that to him, and it ultimately led to them adjusting the pro staff agreement, the contract, saying that you couldn't use a competitor's product. I had already, at this point, had been on the Torquedo pro staff, and I wasn't going to ruin that relationship, so I chose to step away from Old Town. And now I have a Hobie PA-12 360.
Nice.
I'm not even sure if that's going to be the boat that I'm in next year. I'm not sure. I mean, I honestly, I loved my PDL, and I still have it. I don't see myself going back into it, but, it's, the PA-12 might not be the right size boat for me. I might need something bigger. So it might be a PA-14 360, or, I'll tell you one boat that I absolutely loved after I saw it in action this year on the Susquehanna River was that Hobie I-11S.
Oh, nice, yeah.
So that boat, you can pedal it in less than a foot of water. Like, I think I was in like a little over a half a foot of water and getting a full pedal stroke because it's got the short, stubby turbo fins on it. Mm-hmm. I was in less than a foot of water getting a full pedal stroke out of that boat. And I live on the Susquehanna River, which is a shallow, rocky environment with a lot of, there's just a lot going on with it. Yeah. It can eat some pedal drives up. That boat might be, if I'm able to find one and get into one, that might be my new riverboat, to be honest with you. It's a solid platform. So, but I don't know. I mean, that's all for. We gotta see if there's gonna be even boats available to buy in 2021.
Yeah, especially with Hobie, man. They've been hit the hardest, I think.
I think every company so far this year has been just devastated as far as not so much devastated. I shouldn't use that word. They've just been sold out. They can't make enough boats to supply the demand. And fortunately enough for us, the consumer, the boat prices haven't skyrocketed more than they already are. Because if I owned a business that had kayaks that were in high demand, I would increase the prices. Yeah. It's supply and demand. It's American business. That's how it works. But fortunately enough, we're not in that position yet. So let's hope that stays the same. But 2021 is it's shaping up to be an exciting year as long as we can have tournaments. Yeah. The schedules that I've seen released so far have been, overwhelmingly awesome, especially the Hobie schedule. I know I'm kind of biased to it, but they've got some fantastic fisheries on that schedule for 2021. I think I decided that I was going to fish 7 or 8 of them. I can look at that real quick. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, possibly 8 Hobie events if I qualify for the Tournament of Champions. And that's out of, there's 10 regular season events next year and there's the Tournament of Champions. So out of 11, I'm looking at 8. That's a lot. It's a lot of travel. So, but they're all really great fisheries, and they're places that I want to go. So, and I fortunately have a pretty awesome work schedule where I work like every other weekend. I work, I don't only work every other weekend, but, I have a 3-day weekend every other weekend. So I'm able to kind of, fluctuate that, switch it around, maybe take some days or maybe work some days in place of some others. So, it should be a fun year though.
Yeah, I was just looking. You posted the schedule on your stories, and I was just looking at it before we interview. And man, July and August for you is gonna be
So
it's gonna be mayhem.
So I looked at that too.
It's mostly in Pennsylvania, right?
Right. Yeah. Before I made it, like I literally sat down and I looked at it. So I have to go back to Lake Seminole in February. I can't miss that. I was fortunate enough to win that event last year. I have to go back to try to defend that.
Yeah.
And then Watts Bar Lake in Tennessee at the end of February. I don't know if people know about Watts Bar because it's not one of those lakes on the Tennessee River chain that's often talked about like Chickamauga and Guntersville. But Watts Bar there are some trophy fish in that lake. I believe they've been stocking it with some Florida strain largemouth. Like that event could be big, like in both terms of big fish as well as, big limits. Like that could be a really, really cool deal down there. Lake Hartwell, Hartwell's, it's got them big, what the hell, what are they called? The bait fish,
Shiner, shad,
It's not the shiners. I forget the name of them off the top of my head, but they have a specific type of bait fish down there that are just pretty big. So the bass get pretty, obviously get pretty big down there. Hartwell was on there, and then I have a local event here in the Pennsylvania Bass Nation on June 19th. Mm-hmm. There's a lake we have that borders. It's on the border of Pennsylvania and Ohio called Pinewood. Mm-hmm. There's some big fish in that lake. It's a decent sized lake in the state, and there's also some really big quality fish in there. That one should be a really fun event. And then as we get into the summer, we're going up here finally going to the Northeast. Everybody in the Northeast that's been complaining that Hobie hasn't come there. Well, we're going to New York. And
Champlain, yep.
Champlain is going to be on fire that time of year. Like you could catch fish on beds, you could catch fish post-spawn, pre-spawn. You could catch smallmouth, you catch largemouth. Like you can catch almost any way you want to fish, any way you're comfortable fishing. I feel like you can fish Lake Champlain. Whether it's shallow, whether it's deep, whether it's fishing for largemouth, fishing for smallmouth, that you have it at Champlain. So that should be really fun and exciting. And then I have a local event here on the Susquehanna River on a stretch that I've actually never fished. So that should be a cool learning experience. And then the Hobie Bass Open Series comes back to the Susquehanna in late July. And there might be some changes to that tentative schedule with the Mid-Atlantic Kayak Bass Fishing Organization. They have not released their schedule yet. Mm-hmm. And I'm really kind of partial to them because even though I live in PA, the MAKBF is based really out of Maryland, but they're really kind of closer to me than most of the stuff in PA is. So, there's probably a really solid chance that if there's conflicts in dates that I would opt for the MAKBF. But there's also for the Hobie B.O.S. series going back to the Mississippi River in La Crosse.
Yep.
That fishery it's amazing. Like I've never, I was up there last year for the B.O.S. series, and I think each day of the tournament I caught like 50 fish. I mean, there's just so many fish up there. It's a really good time. And then we end out the season in the Hobie series down at Lake Pickwick on the Tennessee River, which I think that's going to be dominated by smallmouth. I think that's going to be a big time smallmouth tournament. And then October, we have the PA Bass Nation. If I qualify for that championship, it'll be right here on my home water. And then if I qualify, going to the Hobie Tournament of Champions on Lake Eufaula, Alabama, to play with alligators. So, there's some gators down there in Alabama. So I see my buddy Jim Clark's always catching them on frogs and playing with them, and I'm like, what are you doing? Put those things back in the water, dude.
Yeah, I imagine that wouldn't be fun to catch.
I don't know. Like, I don't know. I don't even know. How do you take one of those off the hook? Like,
I assume you don't. You just cut your losses.
Well, man, if it's like a $15 frog, I'm really not interested in giving it up,
But yeah, I got it, and you bring it up, you only have like 2 fingers left.
Hey,
you're holding it with your 2 fingers left. I got it.
I got my frog back. That's all. Like, how many fingers do I need to hold a rod? Like, 1 or 2? I don't know.
That's a good point.
My thumb and like 1 or 2.
Yeah. You need the thumb then, you kind of have at least the opposing thumb. So I'm kind of disappointed in the sense that I know it's a lot further for you, but none of the trails that are coming, Hobie B.O.S. that are coming near Texas, you're going to be on it. You're not going to be in the ones in Oklahoma or Louisiana or Texas, in Houston.
Yeah, so they have the one in Dardanelle in Arkansas, and they have the one in Broken Bow, Oklahoma, and then they have the one in Rayburn. Rayburn is up in the air. I have not decided on Rayburn yet. It's like a 16, 17 hour drive for me. So if I go to Rayburn, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I'm going to that one yet. I want to. I think it would be fun, but I didn't put it on there because it's really, 50-50 whether or not I'm going. So I don't want to sit there and commit to it and then not go. If I go, it's going to probably be like, I'll know like a week or 2 in advance if I get wild hair at my ass to go fish Rayburn. I don't know.
And your schedule is busy as it is.
Yeah, and there's a lot of travel, and the thing is, like, I'm off that weekend for Rayburn, but even though I'm off that weekend, I would still have to take vacation time from work on the front and back end.
Yeah.
Just for travel, and that's where my problem comes. Like, I don't have to take vacation days to fish it, but I have to take vacation days to travel for it. Maybe if I could fly, that would be different. But if I fly, then I'm gonna have to borrow a boat, and then you have to worry about your rods making it with you and your tackle and all that other stuff. I don't know. I don't like having all those uncontrollable, things. So we'll see. I don't know. I want to fish Rayburn, but it's not as high up on priority as the rest of those events are.
No, and again, with the travel and being so far away, and I said Louisiana, I made Arkansas, I'm sorry, but yeah, we do have Arkansas, Oklahoma, and not Dallas, and Cyber Rayburn down by Houston. I thought Hobie had one in Louisiana, but I guess I was wrong.
No,
but
not this year, I don't think.
No, I don't think. I might have confused it with something else. But anyways, yeah, that's a big travel, and 17 hours is not easy. And like you said, vacation, going in, going out, and plus everything you do, and yourself, you have the whole pretty much every month. I think April and March you're not fishing, right? You kind of jump from February to May.
As it stands right now, unless the MAKBF releases something in those months, I probably won't be fishing any tournaments those months. But I'm actually okay with that, because Pennsylvania, our primary time for the spawn up here is that March, April time frame. You can catch some really nice bass here in March and April, and I'm okay with staying home and fishing for some jaints here at home.
Yep.
Rather than go and try and find somewhere else. Fortunately enough, one thing I like about the way that Hobie has done their schedule, and a lot of places do it this way, is they kind of follow the spawn up the coast, if you will. Like we're starting out in February in Georgia on the Georgia Florida line. Those fish should be primarily pre-spawn. maybe actively spawning. And then, as they go up a little higher in February, they're definitely going to be pre-spawn at Watts Bar. I wouldn't assume that any of those fish are going to be in the spawning stages there. But as you go up, as you get higher north, it just kind of, you kind of follow the spawn. Even at Champlain in June, like, it is not outside the realm of possibility in June that you catch bedding fish in New York. So, they spawn a lot later up there. The Susquehanna, one thing I do like about what they did with the Susquehanna River event is that when all the lakes are post-spawn and those fish are kind of in a funk, or they go out deeper where they might be a little harder to catch, the rivers really turn on. You'll have a topwater bite, a phenomenal topwater bite, June through basically the end of October here in the Susquehanna River. And it's all shallow water. You could really, and you catch some good quality fish out of it too. Like, the way they did their events and thought it out was really kind of awesome. They made it, the most opportunity for you to catch good fish everywhere that they're going. Rayburn might be kind of an outside deal there because it's June in Texas. But, I mean, I think June in Texas, it doesn't matter. Even post-spawn Texas fish are still big fish. So,
Yeah. And June shouldn't be that hot. Like, June, a lot of people think, actually July and August when it gets really hot here. So June shouldn't be that bad.
I was stationed in Texas for a little bit, and there's some times of the year it's like, why would you even want to live here? But
yeah, it's crazy, man. It can get hot in a heartbeat. It's just great, and I imagine it's like that in most places. But there's something about, especially on spring here, that's just totally unpredictable. Even now, like right now, we haven't got really fall weather yet. Like we're still in this week has gone down. I think next week is when we really start hitting fall weather, in the low 60s, high 50s. But so far it's just been mid to upper 70s. So
yeah. Last night at work, I saw 21 degrees.
Yeah, not definitely like that. Definitely. It should be interesting, man. And of course, we wish you the best on all of your tournaments. Which one? I know you mentioned Lake Seminole. You want to defend your win there. Any other that you feel comfortable? I'm assuming anything in the Susquehanna River, you're going to feel comfortable taking it home the W. But which ones are you marking on your calendar? Obviously, other than the national championship and the Tournament of Champions.
So, I mean, you talked about Seminole, you talked about Susquehanna, so we can leave those two out. I think the one, to me, that's the most appealing is probably a toss-up between Champlain and La Crosse, Wisconsin. There's something about that fishery out there in Wisconsin that, I mean, there's just so many good fish, quality fish out there. They're river fish, they're strong, they're angry, they're hateful, they want to, They just want to eat, and that was a lot of fun to fish out there. Champlain is the nice thing. They're the most appealing thing to me about Champlain is that you can literally catch them wherever you want. Excuse me, a little hiccup there. You can catch them anywhere you want, and there's a lot of good fish in Champlain. I mean, you watch the Bassmasters series. And you watch some of the fish that they're pulling out of Champlain. I think Seth Feider pulled like a 7-pounder out of there last year, largemouth. And then there's guys out catching 5 and 6 pound smallmouth too. So, it's like, it's just an incredible fishery. I really think Hobie hit that one out of the park with that choice for the Northeast. That's going to be a fun time up there. But locally, I would say, I mean, on the national stage, it's those two. But locally, I really hope that the MAKBF goes back to the Upper Chesapeake Bay. That fishery I love it, man. I love that fishery. Like, that fishery is so special. There's so many big fish on the Upper Bay. And you can catch smallmouth down there, too, if you get close to the mouth of the Susquehanna. But There's some really good quality largemouth on the Upper Bay. So I think those are the ones that I'm looking forward to the most. I always look forward to anything on the Upper Chesapeake Bay, though. If you talk to anybody, I love that fishery. And that's even, like, it's tidal water, so you can go out there one day and catch a bad tide and get skunked, and the next day you can go out and catch a good tide and catch 20 pounds. So it's like, it's a really cool fishery.
That's pretty awesome. I've never fished on like tidal water, but I know like when we look at California, like every time they got of California, it seems like the Hobie B.O.S, even Hobie B.O.S last year. And by the way, they're not going back there this year, and I can see why, because last year I think they only had like very few anglers showed up.
Yeah.
But even the top 10 were just all Californians and Russ Snyder, which is,
but I mean,
born in California, anyways.
He's a Californian.
Yeah, he's a Californian. He doesn't live there, but
cutting his teeth fishing out there.
Yeah. So it's like, like you said, it's tidal water. So it's like if unless you're from there, you really. I mean, the only one that I can remember, it wasn't Hobie B.O.S, it was maybe KBF. There was an event there like week or 2 weeks prior, and I think the only one that cracked the top 10 was Cody Milton. So that was not from California. So it's one of those things. If you're not used to that tidal water and all that, the dynamics of it can change like in a heartbeat.
I mean, I think the big thing with tidal water fishing is that you can get incredibly discouraged.
Mm-hmm.
If you go out and you're fishing a tidal fishery, there may only be a 1 to 2 hour period of your 8-hour tournament day that you can reasonably expect to catch fish. Because if the tide's not moving the way you need it to, those fish will get really, really, really tight-lipped. So, tidal water fishing can be difficult mentally. But in that 1 to 2 hour time period, if you are not making the most of the opportunities presented to you and you're not in the right position, that's where people fail on tidal water. Tidal water fishing really is easy because when the tide's moving, they're going to eat. But if you don't make the right decisions to put yourself in the best situation when it's time for them to eat, then you're not going to do well on tidal water. And a lot of times that's really hard to do in a kayak because you have limited mobility, you have limited range. It's not like you're in a bass boat and you're like, okay, well, the tide should be moving down here. Let me make a 30-minute run going 70 miles an hour. No, you don't have that luxury. Like you really have to do a lot of mental pregame homework when you're going to fish a tidal, body of water that's a tidal water fishery. And then, like I said, whenever it comes time, when those tides are moving at their most optimum time, you better make the most of it. Because if not, that time's going to go. It's going to come and go, and you're going to be looking at your zeros talking about tidal water fishing stupid. But somebody's going to have 95 inches and be like, no, tidal water fishing's awesome. You know what I mean? So, I don't know. Tidal water fishing is fun. And for me, it's fun. You got to take the good with the bad, though.
Yeah, it's fun if you're used to it and you know what you're doing, I guess. More than anything.
There's a lot of books and stuff written about tidal water fishing. I think one person that I like to watch for tidal water stuff is Smallmouth Crush. He does a lot of guiding stuff on the Upper Chesapeake Bay and does a lot of tournaments on tidal water. He has I don't want to call him a co-host, but he has a great friend named, his name's Epic Eric. That dude fishes on the Potomac all the time, and the Potomac's another tidal water fishery. Like, I've learned an incredible amount from those two, YouTube learning, really, about tidal water fishing. Ike Ellie's another one. He knows a lot about tidal water fishing, the Delaware River, the Upper Bay, the Potomac. Like, that's all kind of in his wheelhouse, being from New Jersey. It's fun though. I will say that, like you know, in the tidal water fisheries that we have, we also have this a fish species it's an invasive species called northern snakehead.
Oh yeah.
Oh my god, dude! You want to talk? Listen, go get yourself a box of dollar from Walmart and just go out there and just get ready, dude. Those things they are vicious.
Yeah.
Some of the most epic topwater blow-ups I've ever seen in my entire life. Dude, they are just vicious. Fun, really fun to catch, and they taste amazing.
Really?
Oh yeah. Yeah, they're considered like a delicacy. I know people that will go out, there's people that go out bow fishing for them and just commercial fishermen that go out fishing for them, and they'll sell those things to restaurants for high dollar. Like really high dollar. You know, they're really, really tasty fish. They're better than a walleye, in my opinion.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, walleye is kind of one of the top, you know,
Yeah.
you know, sought after game fish to eat, you know, to actually eat. That's pretty cool. I haven't gone snake fishing. I've seen a bunch of videos, and yeah, they look like, man, they have a nasty attitude. Those things are no joke. It's kind of like I don't know, like a pike on steroids or something.
So the way I've always described snakehead is that you have the anger of a pike.
Mm-hmm.
You have the hunger really of a smallmouth, and then they fight and roll like a mixture between like a muskie and a catfish.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's you know, if if bass didn't exist and they had snakehead tournaments, no one would ever want to fish for bass. Like these things are just absolutely insane. And dude, they got some teeth in them too.
Yeah.
They are some, and they can live out of water. Like it's illegal, in most of the states here, Delaware, Pennsylvania, Maryland, places, Virginia, like places over here that have them. It's illegal to possess a live one because they're invasive.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they can live out of water, and you could put them in a live well and leave them in there for a day and come out and they'll still be flopping. You know, they're really hard to kill. Like if you want to keep one, I got to tell you. So I was fishing a tournament on the Potomac last year, and I watched a guy catch a snakehead. He was in a glitter boat, and he catches a snakehead, and he doesn't want to pull it into the carpet because they're slimy and they'll make a mess and they thrash a lot. Like if you catch a snakehead and you're in a kayak, make sure your shit is strapped down because that thing is going to lose its shit inside the net. And you may lose rods, you might lose anything that's not tied down, it's gone. They will get very feisty. So, but you know, he didn't want to bring it in the boat, so he has it laying, like hanging over the side of his boat, and he's got this little metal ball bat, and he's like beating the shit out of this thing's head, and it's not dying. And every time, I mean, it's really inhumane when you thoroughly think about it, but every time that, or not every time, but he missed like a couple times.
It just dented his boat.
Yeah, all you heard was him hitting the side of his boat, and I'm like, oh my god, I'm like, this guy's over here just destroying his shit trying to kill this snakehead. But I mean, yeah, he probably hit that thing 5 times before it finally stopped, you know, doing snakehead things. Like it was, they're vicious, man. They're absolutely vicious.
Yeah, it'll be fun. There's one YouTuber, Boomerang Man, I forgot his name. I can't remember. That he loves catching those, and he posted, he posts on Instagrams every time he catches one, and videos, and those things are just massive attitude problems, man. But they seem fun to catch. I wouldn't want them in Texas if they're invasive species, but it definitely goes. I don't know if it's on that area in the East Coast where they have them. I'll check it out.
So they're invasive, and everyone talks really badly about them. But if you look at the bass populations on the upper Chesapeake Bay and the Potomac, since the introduction of northern snakehead, the bass populations have done nothing but gotten better.
Oh, that's good then.
And honestly, I think so. I think they're kind of more help than they are harm. And the reason I say that is just based on fishing a lot for bass during the spawn on these fisheries. You don't often catch snakehead where bass are spawning at.
Mm.
So they're not really affecting the fry and all that kind of stuff. But you more often catch snakehead in the staging points before where you get to where the bass are spawning.
Okay.
And the reason being is because they're eating the predator fish that are coming in to disrupt, like the nest raiders, bluegill, perch, stuff like that. They'll sit back and wait for these schools of bait fish to come through and just annihilate those. That, in my mind, it helps the bass. It helps the bass with their spawning. And, snakehead, they reproduce in very effective and high numbers, but in their infancy, they don't have a solid bone structure. So they're actually really easy for bass to eat when snakeheads are very little. Bass can eat those things and digest them really quickly and easily because of the fact that they have very, not a very strong bone structure. Once they become an adult, I don't think there's going to be any bass that eats one. But, as long as they're controlled in their population and stuff like that, and people, there is no limit. You can keep as many as you want. You go out and catch as many as you want. I think as long as they keep those things in place and no agency comes through and says, well, we need to protect them, I think that they're going to continue doing good for the bass populations. And I don't mind them being there, honestly. I really don't. I think they're a good thing. Yeah,
it's kind of like I guess what you're saying is they eat whatever is preying on the bass prey, and you think, okay, well, that's bass food too, but they're substituting that with their own prey, which is bass food. So they don't eat bass prey, but the bass can eat their prey, kind of thing.
So I don't.
It works out, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think snakeheads are eating bass in high numbers. Maybe in their smaller stages they're eating bass, but I wouldn't say that they're eating any more bass than bass are eating.
Yeah.
Because bass will eat smaller bass, so, it's one of those things. Now, like, I say that about this invasive species, about northern snakehead, but I'm completely opposite on another invasive species that's affecting my river right now, which is the flathead catfish.
Oh, yeah.
Flathead catfish have made their way up into the Susquehanna River, and I'm catching 16, 17-inch smallmouth with bite marks along their body because a 30 or 40-pound flathead tried to eat it. Those fish they're like vacuum cleaners. They'll eat anything that gets in their way, they'll eat it. And they have done a significant number, damage on the smallmouth population here in this river. We have problems just like everywhere else has as far as pollution and flooding and whatnot. But the introduction of flathead catfish it's been a detriment to the trophy smallmouth population on this river system. The Susquehanna River's been known for a very long time for having like Great Lake-sized smallmouth in a river, and we still do. The numbers aren't there, and the size isn't there either because the older fish are dying off, and unfortunately the younger fish now have a different competitor that they have to deal with, and that being the flatheads. They just caught last year. They caught a state record flathead out of the Susquehanna, just a little bit south of me, 55 pounds.
Jeez.
I mean, that fish is going to eat any fish in this river. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's nothing that fish is not going to be able to eat in this river. And they don't have any problem trying to eat anything that comes across their path. And they, aside from eating smallmouth, they also have done a significant number on the baitfish population too. So, Invasive species, unfortunately, it's a broad term, but
Yeah.
not all of them are bad. Some of them are, but not all of them are, and I don't think northern snakehead are that bad. So,
Yeah, that's a
but I'm
good
also
point.
not a biologist, so
Yeah. It's not like Kentucky with all their Asian carp thing. That's a mess over there.
yeah, I feel so bad. I mean, I never got to experience Kentucky Lake in its heyday, but after being there this year and hearing about how it's been in years past, I can see how people are upset. You know, those and plus those Asian carp were dangerous, man.
Yeah.
Like they just jump up out of the water. Like I
I
had
saw the video of Christine Fisher got almost hit by one
yeah.
this year, scared the crap out of her.
Yeah, like if you're rolling around, if you're just rolling down the lake and next thing you know you scare one and it just jumps and you're like, holy crap. And and I think that's what happens, like they get scared from like boat wash or just something above them scares them and then it just makes them like involuntarily jump.
Yeah.
They could, I mean, if you're fishing out of a kayak, dude, they could
Yeah, you got I don't know how much they weigh or how big they can get, but let's say 7 or 8 pound hitting you smack in the face, gonna knock
right.
your lights out for a second.
It might knock you out of your kayak if you're not paying attention. Like, who knows?
Yeah.
Those things they're wild though, man. Wild.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Kentucky used to be legendary. Now it's like you said, it's a mess over there. They're trying their best, but I mean, once you get to that numbers, it's just crazy. It's hard to keep it under control when it gets out of hand. So, Jake, this year, let's do kind of like a year in review. What do you liked about this year? You know, with all I know COVID, Corona, whatever you want to call it, just threw a wrench in everybody's plan. But thankfully, kayak fishing survived and is thriving. But needless to say, it did affect a lot of people's travel plans with some of the tournaments being canceled, postponed. So aside from that, I don't want to give COVID too much credit as it already is. But aside from that, how was your year? What did you like the most? What did you felt you struggled with the most?
So at the beginning of this year, I made a list of goals, and I'm a list maker myself. I made a list of goals, and at the top of that list, it said that I wanted to fish better on a national stage because I had done well on a local stage, and I had not done well on a national stage. So I devoted a lot of time and effort into fishing better on a national stage. And then the first tournament of the year on a national stage at Seminole, I won. And from that point, it was like, oh,
you belong.
Right, like I achieved that goal. Now what? You know what I mean?
I peaked too early.
Right. It's like there's no lead up to it. It was just like boom, it happened. And after that, I really kind of focused on making a run at the Angler of the Year for Hobie. And I'm just I wasn't as good as as 9 or 10 other guys, but and girls, but I had a pretty consistent year. I had a lot of consistent finishes. I did make a couple bad mistakes throughout the year, but I forgot them quick. Lake Norman was one of those. I didn't go with my gut, and I fished what I shouldn't have been fishing. The Susquehanna, I had a slight medical issue that affected me on day one, and then day two, I just made a bad judgment call. But other than that, I think I finished at Kentucky Lake. I was low 30s, but I was sitting in 5th place after day one. I just had a rough day two. Mississippi River, I was low 20s. I finished 10th or 11th at Tecumseh River. So, I mean, I was fairly consistent, like that kind of, 10 to 20, 10 to 25 ranked angler throughout the year. Going into the Tournament of Champions. But the focus that I was having was catching a limit each day and then building upon that. But, I was able to succeed on that in most cases. For me, that was a success story because that's not something that I was able to do in years prior on a national level. I mean, these these folks that fish this national stage, month in and month out, they're good. Like, they're really good. Jody Queens and Russ Snyders and Drew Gregory's and, the list goes on. Ron Champions and Eric Siddiqui's. Like, these folks are solid. It's hard to, compete with them, and to be able to beat them in some cases or be right there with them. That was a good thing for me. It helped. I wish I would never say that I didn't want to win Seminole, but I wish I wouldn't have peaked so early to give me kind of like some build up, some ramp up. But I would never take that back. That was such a great feeling. That place was special. That place has some giants in it.
Did you fished there before?
Not until last year, no.
No. How was the pre-fishing for that one? Going into that, were you the pre-fishing? You're like, yeah, I got this, or it was like more like, good Lord?
Nope, completely opposite.
Isn't it always like that?
I think so, man. Like, so the thing with Seminole that time of year, I think one day we had like 60 degrees, next day was 30, next day was 60, next day was 30. The weather patterns were all over the place. It was crazy. Like, the weather patterns were all over the place. And then we had high waters up in the river. It was a shit show. I mean, there were people that would go out and catch, in a day of practice, they would catch like 2 or 3 23-inch bass, and they'd go out the next day and get skunked. And that was kind of the deal. Like, that was the way it was. Fortunately enough, for Saturday and Sunday, we had gotten some 2 days of quality weather. And I actually went to a place sight unseen. I had not pre-fished there at all. I think the entire week leading up to that tournament, I caught 5 fish total, and I was there Monday through Friday. So I literally went into Saturday, and I'm like, if I don't catch a limit, I'm out. I'm going home. I'm not wasting any more time. But, I went out and ended that day in second place with like 92 inches, and I was like, well, I guess I got to stay. And I think, day 2 was a lot tougher. It was a lot tougher just because the sun had gotten high and there was no wind, and my fish that I had, they moved into deeper water and I had to search for them. But it took all day to get a limit on Sunday. My 5th fish didn't come until 45 minutes left in the tournament, and fortunately enough, my 5th fish was a 7-pound, almost 22-inch bass that put me 1 inch in front of Josh Counts, who was leading wire to wire. He came out on day 1 and put up like 105 inches or some crap like that. But he was basically in charge the entire time until 45 minutes left in day 1, where I was able to put that big one on the board and, make that move. So I couldn't do much that last 45 minutes. Like, I couldn't cast. I mean, that fish was 7 pounds. I was shaking. I think I might have cried. Like, it was, I was a train wreck that last 45 minutes. I'm glad I didn't have to upgrade anymore. So,
once you caught that one, did you knew you have, because I know sometimes you can check, how the other one is doing, and granted there's no guarantee, but you thought, okay, I got this now. Barring anything bigger, he upgrades, which at that time would have been hard for him to upgrade. But would you felt like, yeah, I got this, or were you like, no, I don't know yet?
I was nowhere even close to comfortable. I caught the fish. I was incredibly excited. I uploaded the fish, and I try to make a habit of not looking at the leaderboard until I get a limit. And up until that point in time in the day, I did not have a limit. So that was my limit fish. And when I caught it and uploaded it and saw that I was now 1 inch in front of Josh, he had like a 12-inch fish on the board. So he could have easily, upgraded that 12-inch
Oh,
fish.
yeah.
And in no way, shape, or form, I felt no way comfortable. Nothing was comfortable. Like, but I was just, mentally, I kind of like checked out after I caught that fish. I'm like, holy shit, like, this might be real. But then after that, like nerves set in and I was a mess, dude. Like I was messing, like I think my next cast, I put a, $15 chatterbait into the tree, like 10 foot up. I mean, it was kind of ridiculous, man. Like I was a train wreck, but, fortunately enough, I was able to hold it out and, standing on that stage, even standing on that stage when it came down to just me, Kurt Smits and Josh Counts, like I was standing there and I'm like, I don't know if I'm in third, second. I don't think I won. None of that. Like when you look at pictures, because there were a couple pictures taken of me, like I was standing there with my head down and not really looking around. Like I just kind of was unsure of what was going on. That was a nerve-wracking feeling, dude.
I bet. Especially being your first national tournament, right? That was your first one?
It was my first national tournament.
Oh, okay.
It was the first time that I ever had a chance of winning one,
Okay.
First time really that I ever done well in one. Up until that point, I sucked, man. I did terrible. But I also wasn't putting the time and effort into it in the previous ones that I did into this one. So, it was fortunate enough that I paid off and kind of set the standard of winning, which it's hard to recreate that in this.
Yeah.
So
that's crazy. What bait worked for you? And I know it changes because of season, pre-spawn, spawning and all that, post-spawn. But overall, what's your comfort bait or comfort technique?
So I am 100% a power fisherman.
Mm.
I do not like the finesse fish, but my most productive bait, and I'm actually going to be doing a YouTube video on this here in the off season. But my most productive bait this year was a jackhammer.
Yeah, I knew you were going to say that.
I'm not gonna really discuss colors and things like that because it really depends on the fishery. But I don't think that there is a time of year that I can't catch a fish on a jackhammer. It really depends on how you work it. So it's been my most productive bait. Second to that was probably a whopper plopper. I truly enjoy throwing a whopper plopper, the 110 and bigger. And that's even for smallmouth. Like I'll throw a whopper plopper 130 if I'm trying to catch a trophy smallmouth. And then after that, it's a toss up between either the Kayak finesse jig, that tungsten finesse jig, really like that bait, or a big TRD. And I'm very specific about how I throw, that bait. I only throw it on an owner, finesse head, the EWG finesse head. So all my TRDs and even my regular Ned rigs, they'll be thrown weedless all the time because you get snagged less.
Yeah.
And I really like the owner sharp points on their hooks. Their hooks are top notch.
Yep.
So I really like, those four baits have been my huge confidence baits this year and really what I've caught the most fish on. Seminole, 9 of my 10 fish were caught on a chatterbait. Only one of those fish was caught on a shaky head while I was actually trying not to catch fish. I was trying to preserve my spot, but I was sitting in my spot and I threw a shaky head out and was just sitting there and fish literally picked it up, swam out into current, came back into an area where there wasn't current and just wouldn't drop it. So I crossed his eyes and ended up being like 19 3/4 inch fish.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, I'm kind of fortunate enough to set the hook on that one, right?
Yeah, man, that's a cool story. But man, I don't know. Z-Man hit it out of the ballpark with the jackhammer. I remember when Gene Jensen first came out with the video on YouTube, because that's pretty much like yourself. I'm not this grassrooted Southern guy that was born with with a rod in his hand and been bass fishing all his life. The sport obviously has evolved now, where it's just not. It's not just a Southern thing, It's, you got everywhere from, in Hobie B.O.S. You got, people from all different backgrounds just fishing for that TOC, and it speaks to how the sport is growing. But most of the people that are getting into a sport, and I think I represent, not me represent, but I'm part of that group. It's the YouTube generation. Not that I'm a millennial, because I'm much older than that, but that's how I learned fishing, by going to YouTube and listen. That's the reason why I started the podcast. I was like, I need to get all these experts to come on and talk to me about fishing.
Right.
That was my main motivation to start a podcast, actually, just to be able to talk to you and some of the greats out there. It's like, remember, if I get to sit with them on the mic and talk to them, I'll learn a whole much more. I don't care if anybody else. Not that I don't care. I always like to give good substance to my listeners. But I'm going on a tangent here and I'm getting off topic. The point is, when I saw the Fluke Master bring that video on Jackhammer, I'm like, yeah, it's just a chatterbait. I'm like, whatever, $15, no thank you. Then I finally cave in because everybody was talking about it, and it's hard for me to put it down.
Yeah,
like it's amazing.
Back in the day, the old you've heard of the old school wiggle warts, right?
Yep.
You know, the original wiggle warts. None of them ran the same.
Yep.
They all did different shit. Like they weren't they weren't built to the same standard. They weren't all built to the same standard. But when you got a good one, when you got a good wiggle wart, nothing could beat it. And still to this day, if you can find a good original wiggle wart, nothing can beat it. That's the jackhammer. The jackhammer right now is the wiggle wart of then. Z-Man with their patented head design and their blade design and all that, like they have done something where they have made even mediocre fishermen great.
Yeah.
Because
right here. Right here.
Most
of the boys from mediocre fishermen right here, man.
That's not intended to be an insult at all.
No, it is true for me.
It's just, I feel like anybody can catch them on a jackhammer. I really do.
Yes.
Anybody can catch them on a jackhammer because I don't know what it is, but the fish just want to eat it. Whether it's the sound, the vibration, the action, they just want to eat it. I'm going to be doing it, like I said, I'm going to be doing a video on it and really talking about in depth about how I like it for each, different scenario and stuff like that, and how I use it. And even some of the variations, like there's some variations of that chatterbait that now, the lesser expensive versions, that are really effective. I try, especially like if I'm pre-fishing an event, I won't throw a jackhammer until tournament day because I don't want to teach them. I'll throw a chatterbait elite or something else, and just to try to locate the fish. And then on tournament day, I go to that jackhammer, man, and they don't like, they just want to eat it. Like it's a great bait.
Amazing bait.
And when you add in your own part to it as well, like anyone can cast it out and just reel it in, but when you add in certain things to it, that makes that bait stand out incredibly. There's two baits that I will always have tied on when I go fishing. One's a jackhammer, and one is a wacky rig Senko.
Yeah. I thought you hated finesse fishing.
Wacky rig Senko's not a finesse fishing, man.
It's not? What did I miss?
You're looking at me like I'm batshit crazy. I don't fish a wacky rig like a finesse type of deal. I get aggressive with it.
You like rage cast it and just rage. What do you mean? Is it weightless?
I mean, yeah, most of the time, yeah.
How is it not finesse then?
Because I don't know, just the way I fish it.
How do you fish it that's not finessed? Are you trying to convince yourself that you're not a finesse fisherman?
Basically, yeah.
Your ego, your manly ego. This is not finesse fishing.
I have to train myself that it doesn't start with an F. It's not finesse fishing. I don't know, man. Like I just, for me, I work. Even a wacky rig Senko, I will work it aggressively. It's aggressive rod pops, and I make a lot of casts. I don't like when I think of finesse fishing, I'm thinking of like drop shotting and hair jigging and stuff like that. Dude, I hate that stuff. Like I know that I can go out and catch fish on a drop shot, but I will not throw it. Like I maybe if $30,000 was on the line, yeah, I'll go throw it. But I hate it, dude. Like that to me, that's finesse fishing. When I'm skipping a wacky rig under docks and working, different types of structure and stuff like that, to me that's not finesse fishing because I'm doing it quick. Like it's in there, and if I'm not getting bit after it gets down, I'm out. And I'm on to the next target. In a way, it's like, I don't know. To me, it's like power finesse fishing. How about that? We'll go with.
we'll compromise here.
Yeah,
I really think to fish in a tournament, and I'm being naive here, and I'm not to disrespect professional kayak anglers like yourself and Russ Knight and all of them out there, but I really think a Senko and a jackhammer is all you need, pretty much. Yeah. I mean that's power fishing and power finesse fishing, which is what the new term now. That's both sides of the spectrum. That's right. It's like you don't need anything else. That's the only two baits you need.
Even on the Elite Series is right now, whether it's MLF or the Elite Series or FLW or whatever, and anywhere even in the kayak industry, I would love to see a graph made showing what people who cashed checks were primarily throwing. Because I'm telling you, I will say it without even seeing the numbers, 100% positive that a jackhammer and a Senko are going to be in the top three.
Top two, probably.
Yeah, more
maybe a Thunder Cricket, because I know Thunder Cricket's another favorite. But yeah,
I'm not a fan.
You know what? I've never tried it. Every time right now, what they do is like in some other places, they just have him locked. It's like, do you have, Thunder Cricket? Yeah, but they don't have it on display because people steal them. I was like, okay. But I never see them on display, so I haven't, I've heard a lot of great things about it. But I haven't tried it.
They do have a good action. I've thrown them. But I've had too many of them fail. I've had snaps fail. I've had heads come loose from the blades. I've bent hooks out. I don't have as much confidence in a Thunder Cricket as I do a jackhammer. And I think one of the reasons why I think I've had failures with it is because of that rotating head design.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's just not the right bait for me. I mean, I don't. If I have a jackhammer, I'm going to throw it before I throw a Thunder Cricket. Z-Man has given me no reason to switch.
No, I tried other similars that like generic brand like Bass Pro has one. I figured, okay, it's only $5. If it'll catch me, if it's successful as a jackhammer, because nobody wants to spend $15, $16 on a bait that you probably. If you go to my Instagram stories, it's funny. I lost one. I got snagged. I lost it. Tied on another jackhammer, threw it kind of same direction because I had just lost a big fish there on a jackhammer. And I snagged the one that I lost. So I got him back. And it was like the happiest day of my life.
Yeah.
I got my jackhammer back.
See, I get a little ridiculous with my jackhammers. Like I will replace them quite often because I realize that sometimes those fish they're not in easy places to catch. Mm-hmm. Perfect case in point with Seminole. I was skipping a jackhammer like way up under tree roots.
You're a brave man.
Like it was wild. Like I only lost 2 jackhammers in those 2 days of fishing. Ouch. But I was skipping them into places that you would never throw a $15 bait. But you got to do it if you want to. I mean, when there's money on the line, I'm willing to take those chances. But like I said, in pre-fishing, I'm not skipping a $15 bait underneath those same areas. I'm skipping an $8 bait in those areas. You mentioned about Bass Pro's version of the chatterbait. That's actually made by Z-Man.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, it's the one with the wobble head, the big. I wish I had my tackle up here. It's like the hook is loose, so I don't know if that's.
Okay. I know which one you're talking about, but Bass Pro has a version of the chatterbait that's made by Z-Man. A lot of Bass Pro branded stuff is made by the same companies. Like have you seen their line that's their fluorocarbonates in like a red box?
Yeah.
That's made by Seagar.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And all their casting reels are made by Luz.
That's why I hate them.
Me too.
I can't stand Luz.
And then all of their spinning reels, actually just this past year, they just switched over. All of their spinning reels are now made by Daiwa.
Oh, okay.
And their spinning reels have greatly improved since they switched over to Daiwa. Their previous spinning reel models were trash. And I don't know who made them, but I know now that
I had a couple of those.
Yeah, now that Daiwa has started making their spinning reels, they've greatly improved. But a lot of their stuff is made by outside companies. I think their crankbaits are made by Strike King. They're hard baits.
Yeah.
And the thing is, you're not getting the same quality. You're getting a lesser quality because the company's making it for them at a lesser price. They're using not the same
cheaper
material.
components, yeah.
Right. So that's all it really is. But I actually had, for a while before I lost it, one of my most successful baits was a Bass Pro square bill that just would catch fish when others wouldn't. And then I lost it, and I think I cried a little bit. But you got to, if you're going to buy any Bass Pro baits and stuff like that, just make sure you switch out the components.
Yeah.
Switch out the split rings, switch out the hooks, and just know that if you set the hook on a big fish and it pops off and that bait comes flying back, it's probably going to crack. Especially if they're hard baits. I've cracked a lot of their hard baits literally in half. I had a jerk bait last year that literally broke in half whenever I snapped it back and it hit the side of my kayak. It cracked in half. So, but
let me ask you this: what trailer do you prefer on your jackhammers? It's hard. Once you get me talking about jackhammers, you're not going to get me to stop. So
that's fine. So it's it's primarily what I've began using the most is the razor shads made by Z-Man, just because of how long they last. When you put that Z-Man razor shad on there, they'll stay on there forever, it seems like. But I also like the Yamamoto Zeikos. They're made for that bait. I do not put a boot tail swim bait on a jackhammer. I won't do it.
Why not?
I think the boot tail takes away from the action and the blade.
That's interesting.
So whenever that boot tail's back there kicking, it takes away from that bladed action. I personally think that. I do not catch as many fish with a boot tail swim bait, so I just stopped using it. Now, if I'm imitating bait fish, I'll either use a razor shad or a Zeiko. But if I'm imitating a crawfish, then I'll put on a Z-Man, I think it's the Craw Z or something like that. Either that or a Zoom Speed Craw.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
I
almost died. I'm sorry, go ahead. You were going to say something else.
Well, I was just going to say, those combinations are really all that I use. I really am only trying to imitate two different things. I'm either trying to imitate a bait fish or a crawfish. And, I'll match the trailers up to the color of the bait. And, I do have a couple jackhammers, and I'm not going to talk about their color scheme, but I have had a couple skirts that I've put on, aftermarket skirts put on jackhammers that are very effective. But we're not going to talk about that. We can't.
No, we can't. I respect that.
There's one.
I died a little bit inside when you said Seikos, because I bought the Seikos about a couple of months ago. And I tried it on the jackhammer, and it totally ruined it. I can't stand those things, man. That's the little, like, the riveted tail on it.
Yeah.
I can't catch it. When I put today, I'll give you an example. Today, I tried it because I bought it. I'm like, I want to try it, and I've heard they're for jackhammers that work great. So I tried it. First thing I noticed is, like, this tail does not have any movement at all, like very little. Like, I put it on clear water, it's like it's just vibrating a little bit, which shouldn't be a big deal, because when you see fish, you don't see fish wobbling around like you would mention the book. You see them like very tight tail movement. But I've tried it, and even today I was like, screw it, I'm done with the Seikos. I don't care how much they cost, I'm done. I'm not using them. So I turned on a bootleg rage tail. Striking rage tail. First cast, boom. I'm like, I knew it. I knew it was because I was struggling so much with that Seiko, with that chatterbait once I switched to the Seiko. And the very next cast that I take the Seiko out and put that rage tail, immediately, first one, I'm like, see, it's gotta be the Seiko. So I don't know what it is. Maybe I'm doing it wrong, but it's just, I can't, once I put that Seiko on, I just can't catch it. Maybe because it's Texas. The one that really stands out to me is the Rage Tail Menace. I have a video that I'm going to post on my story. It's only like a 3-second video, but I have it on very clear water. And that erratic motion from that jackhammer. I mean, if you look at the Rage Menace, those fins are kicking madly. And I've tried it. I went last week. I'm not going to say the spot because whoever told me the spot, told me not to say it. So I'm not going to say it. But as soon as I started throwing the jackhammer, that's one thing. When you start throwing the jackhammer, I feel like it's counterproductive in the sense that now this is so easy that I'm forgetting how to fish with a jig or a Texas rig or a crankbait or the big swim bait. And I want to be that all around fisherman, you know. So I don't want to cheat myself of growing because I'm throwing a bait that the fish can't resist. So after a while, I was like, okay, I need to get a fish on the board. This has gone far enough. I tried this, I tried that. And that jackhammer, I put on that Rage Tail, Rage Menace. That thing, man, it's something about that tail movement that they cannot resist pouncing on it. Yeah. In my experience, obviously.
When you put it on, are you putting it on where the tail's flat and the hook comes up like this? Or are you putting it on where the tail's vertical and the hook comes up like that?
I started doing the vertical thing. I saw it on Alex Rod's last year, I think it was, one of his YouTube channel. And I thought, okay, I'll give it a try. It makes sense because it looks like a tail. And I got a couple of bites. But one day I decided, no, you know what? I'm going to switch it up again. Yeah. And it wasn't until I finally put it on clear water. I started trolling it, not to catch fish, but as soon as I switched, like I said, as soon as I switched to that trailer, I caught, like in an hour, I caught 4 fish, but it was, one of them was on a Senko, on the weightless Senko, but the first 3 was 19 and a half, 19 and 18. And that came in about 45 minutes from the first one to the third one. And it was right after I put that Rage Tail. So the water was real clear. So I was like, I'm going to troll the bait next to me and I want to see the action. And I got it on video and I can see why, man. That tail is just flopping so erratically. Yeah. That I think it really triggers those fish just because of the movement. But no, I don't put it vertical anymore. I put it flat, like.
The only time I'll use one of those Rage Menaces is when I'm trying to imitate a bluegill, and since bluegills are kind of like different body shape, or a crappie. If I'm on a fishery where I know they're eating bluegill or crappie or panfish, then I'll use those only to imitate, and I'll put them vertical so the tail so it gives it a bigger profile. I don't know. I mean, everyone has their different thing. I personally don't catch nearly as many fish on a boot tail as I do on this straight tail. I think that the action created by the jackhammer is enough to entice that strike. And I think if I'm going to use a boot tail, I'd rather just throw a swim bait, because I think if they're eating a boot tail swim bait on the back of a jackhammer, they're probably going to eat a boot tail swim bait.
Yeah, that's true.
And not so much a jackhammer. So if I can get away with not throwing a jackhammer and risking losing a $15 bait and only, a $5 bag of boot tail swim baits with some swim bait hooks, then I'll do that before I put a boot tail swim bait on the back of the jackhammer. But so what's the name of the guys? Tactical Bassing.
Yeah, great group of guys.
You're going to use a boot tail swim bait on the back of a jackhammer, rig it upside down so the tail is straight up instead of down. And they say that actually is really effective. I don't do that, but that's one way they say that they'll rig a boot tail on the back of a jackhammer like that. That's
interesting, because I saw I bought recently a package of Rage Tail, the bootleg ones. Those are just the Rage Tail, right? The other one is Rage Menace, and the bootleg is just Rage Tail, right? Am I correct?
I thought the Rage Menaces were like the craw style.
Yeah, like the little two fins.
Yeah, and I normally keep those. I don't separate those either. I normally keep them together.
Oh, really? Yeah. Don't they come separated already? I thought they did.
No, you normally got to pull them apart.
Oh, okay. But anyway, so the bootleg ones. So I noticed that there was like, that pattern is upside down. Like I thought it was just because of the way a Chad is, usually you have that silver or gray blackish line through the top with they sprinkle it a little bit, and then the bottom is white, just like a shad is. Mm-hmm. But when I put it on, I'm like, oh, that's weird. The pattern is on the bottom instead of on the top. So I'm wondering if, I don't know, if that was an idea. I'm like,
could be. They could have just messed up the.
Yeah, I thought it's like I think they messed it up, because once I put it on, I'm like, did I put it on right? And I'm like, no, I put it like it's supposed to be. It's just that it has that pattern on the bottom instead of the top, which is what the natural color of a Chad would be, on that color on the top and white on the bottom. But I also go ahead. I'm sorry.
I encourage you to give those Zakos another try, though.
I still have them. I just got tired of it. I kept throwing them, and I was like, all of a sudden my jackhammer bite went off, and I was like, I don't know, maybe it's just Texas bass. But yeah, man, I've caught, like, before I let you go, 'cause I know, like I said, you get me talking about jackhammers. My biggest bass all came on jackhammers. 22 and a quarter this year, a 20 and a half, and a few 19s and a couple of 18s, all jackhammers, all of them. It's just crazy.
My big fish this year, my three biggest fish are all different baits, actually. I caught that 7-pounder down in Seminole on a jackhammer. I caught a 7-pounder here in Pennsylvania on a square bill. And then I caught a giant smallmouth. It was probably 5.5, maybe even closer to 6 pounds. I don't think it was 6. Yeah. It was every bit of 5 pounds, but that fish was caught on a Whopper Plopper 130 in less than a foot of water.
That must have been an exciting bite.
Oh, it was. That was like a $600 fish too. It won me big bass in the KBF event they had here on the coast. So, but yeah, it was, I think those are my three biggest fish this year.
Nice. Well, Jake, I've had you for more than an hour now. You're in Eastern time, so it's getting a little late for you. I don't want to keep you up. I'm super grateful for you coming on the show. This has been every bit as enjoyable as I expected it to be. So I really thank you. It's been an honor to have you on my show. So I'm going to let you go. But before we do that, I want you to take the opportunity to thank any sponsors, anybody else that you want to thank, that makes your fishing easier.
So, first and foremost, I appreciate you offering me to come on, and hopefully I'll give you another reason to have me back next year.
Heck yeah.
Second to that, so my sponsors, a huge thank you to Torqeedo. They're my primary sponsor this year. And Also, Innovative Sportsman, who makes Torpedo motor accessories. Trey Leach he's kind of like my guy that does all my kayak modifications. And then I have Temple Fork Outfitters rods, which I absolutely love those. Brian Swingle, who owns Five Mountain Outfitters, a local shop here. He's been instrumental in my help or in my success this year. And not really a sponsor, but Jamie Koza, who owns Dugout Bait and Tackle, has been amazing as far as, getting me the things that I need and providing me what I need to succeed this year. Those folks have been instrumental in my success. That's basically it. I don't have a whole long list of sponsors. I kind of.
So they're coming. They'll be knocking on the door soon, right?
Maybe. If Z-Man's interested, I'm all for it.
Oh, man. I love to be a Z-Man sponsor, man.
Yeah.
I'll sell my kidney.
I'll give both kidneys. I don't need them. But
definitely, that would save me a whole lot of money.
You ain't kidding.
Jig, well, thank you again so much, man. I appreciate it. For those out there listening, I know you're tired of me hearing this, but be safe out there. It's winter. If it's not, it's coming. So please wear your PFDs. Please make sure you take the. Go ahead.
If I can add to that.
Yes.
If you are in a cold weather environment and the water temperature is below 50 degrees, wear a second layer of defense. And what I'm talking about is a dry suit.
Yep.
I don't care if you're wearing a PFD. If you fall into 50-degree water and the air temperature is anything below 60, you don't have much time before you're going to die.
No. I was just about to say the 120 rule, so yes.
Yep. So
there you have it. You heard it from the experts. So it's not just me telling you follow Jake's advice.
Yeah, man.
And be safe.
There's not a time right now, this time of year, November, that you will catch me not wearing a dry suit. So
there you go.
Thanks for having me on, bud. I appreciate it. It's been fun.
It's been fun, man. So thanks again. If you made it this far, thank you for sticking around. Hope you enjoyed it. And thanks again to Douglas Rods for sponsoring our show. DouglasOutdoors.com. Go check them out. Thank you. Have a good day. Peace out.
Thanks for tuning in to another killer episode on Paddle and Fin. Don't forget to go check out our website at paddle_and_fin.com. Don't forget to check out the YouTube channel at Paddle and Fin. If you got a question, comment, want to hear from a future guest on a future episode, feel free to email us at paddle_and_fin@gmail.com. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Paddle and Fin on Facebook and Instagram. Shout out to our show supporters, Angler. The Angler button and app just makes for a better time on the water and creates a virtual logbook for every fishing outing out on the water. Shout out to Rocktown Adventures, located in northern Illinois, for all your kayaking, camping, and hiking needs. TRC Covers, protect your investment. Ketch Products, shout out to Ketch Products. Go to ketchproducts.com and put the Paddle and Fin logo directly on your catch board. Shout out to JigMasters Jigs. When in doubt, get the jig out. Go to JigMasters.com, use promo code PNF20 and save 20% on all your jig and tackle needs.